number that was showing up.
Alex, when she sent us a copy of the roster, some of the names, the county names, like
correct.
Moffitt's name was still on there and stuff. So I just think she just doesn't have it updated.
Yeah, that's typical for both clerk's offices in county and city. So
cool. No, that sounds good. I just want to make sure I wasn't.
No, you're good.
Please don't hang up.
All right, commissioners, we're live.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Chair Kite, and I would like to welcome you to the June 9th, 2021 Historic Resources Commission meeting. The HRC is a quasi-judicial body that is governed by the North Carolina General Statutes, the City of Asheville's Unified Development Ordinance, and Buncombe County Ordinance. We are authorized to hear requests for certificates of appropriateness for alterations, demolitions, new construction, and other work within historic districts, or for the alteration and demolition of historic landmarks, and other duties, including preliminary review of subdivisions as specified in the ordinances for the HRC. All commissioners and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through commission meetings a bit differently than normal. We are streaming live on the city's Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link found on the front page of the city's website, as well as through the link on the HRC webpage. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering code 9384. If you wish to give public comment, you can press *3 during the item that you wish to comment on. Welcome to those of you who are joining us today. I'm going to ask each of the commission members who are participating today to say a quick hello as I call each of your names. Just some reminders about your microphone on your computer. You can stay muted if you're not talking, and make sure you unmute when you want to speak, and then remute your microphone when you're done talking. So I'll give each one of you a quick introduction. If you would say hello, please. Vice Chair Eakins.
He hasn't made an appearance yet.
I see his name on the list, but we'll circle back and check in a minute.
Okay.
Commissioner Bruce.
Hi there.
Commissioner Gardner.
Hi, everyone.
Commissioner Hornaday.
Hi.
Commissioner Lazarus.
Good evening, everyone.
Commissioner Oliva.
Hello.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Greetings.
Commissioner West.
Hello.
Vice Chair Eakins.
Yeah, now I'm unmuted.
Excellent. Okay. To help the audience follow along today, I'm going to state each section of the agenda aloud, and we'll ask for a vocal roll call vote for each vote. The first thing on the agenda is to consider the minutes from the March meeting of the HRC. The minutes include findings of fact and conclusions of law for certificates of appropriateness. Are there any corrections?
I move we adopt the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay.
Luceris.
We'll vote by roll call. Vice Chair Eakins.
Aye.
Commissioner Bruce.
Aye.
Commissioner Gardner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hornaday.
Aye.
Commissioner Lazarus.
Aye.
Commissioner Oliva.
Aye.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Myself, aye as well. And that motion carries. We will now begin the evidentiary hearings for the items listed on the agenda. As a quasi-judicial proceeding, the HRC is not setting policy, nor are we soliciting public opinion on the desirability of an application. The HRC hears and considers evidence presented and applies the standards set forth in the guidelines and standards of the specific historic district for that application. The HRC must make its decision upon competent, material, and substantial evidence to determine the facts of the hearing. The HRC will use judgment and discretion to apply the standards contained in the relevant guidelines to the facts. The commissioners, in voting for an item, will not have a fixed opinion, not susceptible to change, will not have a conflict of interest, and will not have engaged in ex parte communication regarding the application. Rules for speaking. This meeting is open to the public, but participation is limited to interested parties who wish to provide comment or testimony regarding the proposal. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and how they relate to the relevant historic district standards and guidelines, not personal preference or opinion. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. At this time, I will administer the oath for all individuals who intend to provide witness testimony today. For those folks that are currently on the call, and we can circle back around later in the meeting for other applications that may not have joined the call at this time. It looks like we've got Michael Romanello on the phone. What about Ronnie Lunsford for this county?
I think it's just Michael that's here.
Is Aaron Wilson here yet? The rest are not here?
Aaron is. I'm here. Yes.
Aaron's here. I think I saw Cameron Stone earlier when I was looking.
And Suzanne is here also.
And Suzanne. We've got 3 more folks listed for the 119 Cumberland Avenue project. Are we expecting them later?
I'm like pretty sure that Robin and Jeff will be here, but perhaps not Dawn. I think she might just be watching, but she may join.
Okay, well, we'll double check. So right now it's Michael, Aaron, looks like Suzanne, Dawn, and Cam. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And Alex and Shannon also, right? All right, I'm going to read the oath aloud, and then I'll ask each of you individually by name to affirm, and we'll go from there. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing for a certificate of appropriateness before the Historic Resources Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Michael?
I affirm.
Okay. Aaron?
Yes, I affirm.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Dawn?
Dawn's having trouble with her microphone. This is Cam Stone. She just texted me. She affirms, yes.
All right. Cam?
Yes.
Okay. Alex?
Yes.
Shannon? Maybe?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. We will move to our first public hearing. Pardon?
The point of procedure, please, Madam Chair. I don't think somebody can affirm by text through somebody else. So once she's got her mic fixed, I think we need to swear again.
We can circle back. We can catch her if.
That's correct.
Okay.
This is Dawn. I affirm.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to our first public hearing item. We're starting with old business. This is in the Montford Historic District. We're at 90 Montford Avenue. And I'm going to let Alex make your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Kite. The second item needs to be continued to July. Do you all want to take care of that first, or do you want me to present for 90 Montford first?
Oh, we could take care of that.
I move that we continue 240 Pearson Avenue to the July meeting.
Second, Vaughn.
Okay, we'll vote by roll call. Vice Chair Eakins?
Aye.
Commissioner Brusades?
Aye.
Commissioner Gardner?
Aye.
Commissioner Hornaday?
Aye.
Commissioner Lazarus?
Aye.
Commissioner Oliva?
Aye.
Commissioner Vaughn?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Myself, I as well. That we will move, we'll continue 240 Pearson Drive to July. Okay, now we're ready for 90 Montford Avenue.
All right, thank you. So this application, as you all will recall, was under review at the last meeting. The work in question was this retaining wall on the at the intersection of Cortlandt and Gudger, and you all approved for a portion of this wall to be rebuilt at the last meeting. We spent part of the time discussing the fencing that goes along above the wall. There's a chain link fence that travels throughout the site. We spent a lot of time talking about whether the fence could be, what the appropriate material type was, and then also where the most appropriate placement was based on some safety concerns and versus what the design standards require. So the applicant has changed their, I shouldn't say they changed their plans. They're going to go with what was in the previous proposal, which is replacing the fence in the same configuration, but with a 4-foot metal picket fence. I just included this site plan from the previous submittal. If you can see where the fence is located with this dash line with the little circles. I'm sure that's probably hard to see, but in measuring, we spent a lot of time talking about how close the fence could be to the wall based on the design standard that says it has to be set back by 4 feet. In measuring the site plan, it looks like in most places it complies with that. It is set back off the top of the wall. There's this little section here where it kind of curves around at the end of the parking lot there where it gets real close to the wall. So, I think that that's just kind of an anomaly there that I don't think will be an issue. I don't know how that, whether that will cause an issue in terms of how the fence needs to be angled in that spot. But I think generally speaking, I don't have any concerns about what they're proposing at this point, except for they did submit a new fence rendering, which is here on the top left. And I've included on the bottom right an image that shows a metal picket fence that was approved within the last 3 or 4 years by the commission that I feel like is, more appropriate style because the pickets break the plane of the top rail. I can't think of any that the commission has approved where the pickets met the top rail for a metal fence, but just a little detail that I wanted to pull out for discussion today. But other than that, I really don't have any issue. Again, I think that the fence is set back far enough from the wall based on that original site plan that shouldn't be a problem. And I think I was talking about vegetative screening at the last meeting, and I understand that from a maintenance standpoint, that really is not very practical. So unless you all have an opinion about that, I did not list that out as something I thought they should include. So happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Alex? Michael, is there any additional information you'd like to be able to provide to the commissioners?
No, just to clarify, the height is 42 inches or 3.5 feet, and that meets the requirements for the city. Most of the wall is along the parking lot drive, so the direction of travel is parallel to the wall, and therefore does not need to double as a vehicular barrier. For those couple spots there, the only thing left to decide is whether we want to. There's the curb there, obviously. Whether we need to add a couple curb vehicle like parking blocks, which would be very low to the ground. I don't think would be any kind of issue in terms of visualization or whatever for the HRC to consider. But that's the only detail left to work out.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, we're going to pause for just a moment and open the floor for public comment.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I was taking minutes. We do not have any callers in the queue.
Okay, we will close the floor for public comment. Commissioners, any further discussion?
I'm ready to move to approve with condition.
Quick question before we do, Vice Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. The vegetation is the newbie question. Sorry, is vegetation commonly required in these proposals that we approve?
Yes.
So my question is, why are we not making it a requirement for these folks just because they're a government entity as opposed to what we seem to require for residential? I just want to make sure we're treating the residents as fairly.
I wasn't suggesting that that the commission would be making an exception based on their the organization type. My suggestion that they not be required to have vegetation there is from a maintenance standpoint, because the wall is so tall and getting around there to maintain. And you all talked about the safety issues of being between the wall and the fencing. And so that was, where I landed on that was that perhaps the vegetative screening wasn't practical in this kind of limited circumstance, because it's kind of an odd situation where the wall is so tall, being able to maintain it would be a little bit of a challenge. But if the commission feels differently, then by all means require screening, because that's generally the way that fences are treated, is that they're discouraged in the district and it creates a visual boundary where one didn't previously exist. The historic character of Montford, as far as the landscape goes, is like this very kind of naturalized environment. So, screening with vegetation is often a way to kind of, allow for a fence if in a situation where one is needed, but to kind of soften its appearance within the landscape. So that's typically why it's required. But I wasn't saying that it was for the purpose of, it's Buncombe County, let's give them a pass. So.
And Alex, to clarify, the requirement is for the screening to be between the front face of the wall and the fence, not looking at it from the parking lot side at the top of the wall. And so I think that's, for me, the concern that I have is any kind of maintenance that's required is going to make someone have to stand on the edge of this wall that's 10 or more feet above the sidewalk and maintain or plant those things on an ongoing basis. And it also feels to me from just the public side experience that you're not ever really sort of looking, like it's not driving down Cumberland Avenue with a low 2-3 foot wall on a fence in someone's front yard in the way that the public experiences that space. It's a pretty narrow road with a very tall retaining wall, and a pedestrian that's walking on that sidewalk is that's outside of their sort of sight line to be seeing that wall from the sidewalk level in the first place. And so I think that is, I think a little bit, if you've been to the site, it feels like you want to screen the fence from the parking lot. That's not really what the perspective is that the guidelines are speaking to. I think is the real shift there in my thinking. I am interested to know, Michael, if y'all as the applicant would be open to a slight change in the design to match more of the image that Alex has offered, that would have that sort of top rail kind of moves down, so to speak, so that the pickets kind of extend up past the to hit to that 42-inch guardrail height.
Yeah, I'm sure the owner would be open to that. Whatever is required. We kind of just started with the a basic metal picket, considering we were replacing a chain link. But if that is more in line with what's in the district, then I'm sure they're open to making that change.
And Alex, is that something that they could follow up with staff on a final elevation drawing like the one that they've submitted already?
Yes, absolutely.
Ready to make a motion? Madam Chair, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, project description and photographs, 11 pages, Exhibit B, site plan, Exhibit C, fence drawing, and the commission's actual inspection and review of subject property by all members except, I move that this commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. 1, that the application is to amend previously approved CA to include replacement of existing chain link fence with a 4-foot tall metal picket fence.
Sorry, Vice Chair Eakins, it's 42 inch tall.
Thank you. The 42-inch tall metal picket fence setback 4 feet from retaining wall. All work will be in accordance with attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals as required by law must be obtained before work may commence. 2, that the standards for fences and walls found on pages 36 to 37 of the Montford Historic District Design Review Standards, adopted on April 14, 2010, and amended December 9, 2019, were used to evaluate this request. 3, this application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. A, fence will be metal, no taller than 42 inches, and will be set back at least 4 feet from the retaining wall. 4, that the action and improvements proposed in the application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montford Historic District.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, we'll vote by roll call. Vice Chair Eakins,
Aye.
Commissioner Brusades,
Aye.
Commissioner Gardner,
Aye.
Commissioner Hornaday,
Aye.
Commissioner Lazarus,
Aye.
Commissioner Oliva,
Aye.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Myself, aye as well. That motion carries.
Based upon the foregoing findings and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued with the following condition. That applicant submit revised fence drawings meeting the conditions and approval of staff.
Second. Zaris.
Roll call vote. Vice Chair Eakins,
Aye.
Commissioner Brusades,
Aye.
Commissioner Gardner,
Aye.
Commissioner Hornaday,
Aye.
Commissioner Lazarus,
Aye.
Commissioner Oliva,
Aye.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Myself, aye. That motion also carries. Okay. We are moving to the next application on the agenda, which is also old business at 23 Cumberland Circle, also in Montford.
Thank you, Chair Kite. Michael, I will follow up with you in the next few days or so about next steps.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Also, from last meeting, I feel like now I can't hear the meeting for someone. Can someone?
Can you hear me, Alex?
Alex, you're on mute now.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this item is also from last meeting. This is for a new construction project that we talked through. At the last meeting, there were some concerns noted about the vertical siding that was previously included in the last submittal that kind of gave this house a little bit more of a contemporary feel that seemed out of context with the surrounding historic buildings. The applicant has since worked with his clients to revise the siding material proposed. So now they're proposing a fiber cement lap siding with shake siding in the gable end. And so this is the iteration on this slide. And then the architect also sent this to me today, which is really helpful. He took some pictures of some other houses, nearby houses that showed. We talked on the phone yesterday, and I was a little bit unsure about having it be entirely lap siding and not breaking the two floors into different types of siding. That's really typical in the district, but his clients didn't really want to do that. And so he unearthed some examples of other houses in the district that have solely lap siding, and these are all kind of nearby to Cumberland Circle. And so I think it helped alleviate some of my initial concern about that. And I have not noted any concern about the design of the house itself, except for they are proposing an LP material that's a smart shake siding in the gable ends, and that is not a material that the commission has approved before. And without seeing a physical sample, I have a little bit of hesitation around that. Actually, recently I'm part of the Preservation Commission listserv for North Carolina, and there were it's a space where a lot of different preservation planners and other professionals network and ask questions. And one of the more recent questions was about LP siding. It was about lap siding, but it was about asking, do any other municipalities allow this? It doesn't seem to cast the same shadow as a fiber cement siding does. Now, I don't know if that's true for the shake siding. So my preference would be that if you all approve it as is, that they submit a physical sample to our office so that staff can verify that it's consistent with other products that the commission has approved in the past. So that would be one note on the building itself. And then it's still in my staff report, but since writing my staff report, the architect has sent me a revised landscaping plan, which shows some additional foundation plantings in the front, as well as another tree in the front, and I cut it off, but there are two new small maturing trees along the driveway here to provide some screening for the driveway in accordance with the requirements of the standards. There's still some miscellaneous items that I asked for in my list. The rear elevation door specifications have been added to the folder, so we're okay on that, as well as the driveway edging material. The stone sample for the wall, lighting, and mechanical are still outstanding, so those are all conditions that staff can review. So those are really my notes as far as where we are from the last meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you all have any.
Sorry, a quickie. If you don't like the shingle material, what happens?
I would just rephrase and say it's not necessarily about whether I like it or prefer it, and just rephrase that and say, yeah, that I just would prefer to make sure that it's, or, want to verify that it's consistent with fiber cement siding that the commission has approved, because the commission has approved. I think even in the last meeting or the 2 meetings ago, there was and I'm going to botch the brand, but I think it's like Nichiha or something like that, where you all approved a shake siding, and there have been other products approved in the past that were synthetic shake siding, and I just want to verify that it's similar to those products, especially because I'm aware of the conversation in other municipalities that they have not allowed for LP smart siding in their district. So I just want to make sure that we're getting the best product that will appear when it's constructed most consistent with other materials that you all have approved.
So, sorry, I phrased it clumsily, but regardless, if it doesn't meet the conditions that you've spelled out, what happens? Does it come back to us, or if we've already approved it, or what happens?
I would just work with the applicant to get an appropriate shake siding material. Sorry, I didn't realize I did not answer your question.
One other clarification, the lap siding is what material? Is it the same LP?
No, it's a fiber cement siding, and it's a 6-inch reveal.
Okay.
Which is well within what the commission, I think the max that the commission has allowed is 6 1/4 inch. So, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the changes. And
other questions for Alex? Aaron, is there any other additional information? Oh, sorry. Will, go ahead.
Yeah. Alex, there's no need for a side railing on that front porch with that drop off. Is that not? It's not a big deal. But there's no porch railing on the front porch.
it doesn't really look like they need one.
Okay.
But
I'm
I will
fine without it
defer
being there.
I'll defer to Aaron on that. I think is it 36 inches, 30 inches off the ground that building code requires a railing?
Yeah, 30 inches would require a railing, but we'll grade. We will be adding a little bit of fill dirt there at the front porch, so we won't need that.
Aaron, is there any other information you'd like the commission to consider?
Yes, thank you. So just to clarify, the siding material is the LP lap siding. So we can provide a sample of that as well. It would be the smooth version, not the textured version. The shakes that LP has do not come in a smooth. They only do the cedar texture. So we will get a sample of that. We're also fairly flexible. I mean, we could change to a Nichiha or a Hardy if that was preferred. I don't think that would be an issue. It's more of a builder preference, honestly, that particular manufacturer. So I don't think it would be a problem to change it, but I'd be happy to get samples of it. I'd actually like to get a sample in my hands anyway. So that's something that we can do. And then we made changes to we did make changes to the material palette on the exterior, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that. And any other questions that you might have.
Commissioners, are there questions for Aaron? Okay, we'll pause for just a minute and open the floor for public comment.
Madam Chair, there are no callers in the queue.
We will close the floor for public comment. Commissioners, other questions or conversation, discussion? Alex, it looks like you have a note in your staff report about additional landscaping. We haven't talked, I think, a great deal about the landscaping, certainly either last month or this month. I'm wondering if that has been addressed already, Alex, or if that's something that would still end up in a condition as any motion?
No, this slide that I showed, they submitted this earlier, this revised site plan that has some additional landscaping on the front, and then a small maturing tree in the front, and then a couple of more trees along the driveway. So I think we're good there unless the commission thinks they need to provide additional landscaping.
And you've got a list of other product specifications that you're looking for in materials in your staff report as well.
Yeah, maybe I was muted. I went through the list and said that we have the first two, we're good on the last three. Those are still outstanding, and that we can review those at staff level.
Okay. Plus the siding samples, right?
Right.
Okay. Commissioners, other comments or discussion?
I'm ready to make a motion if there isn't. Madam Chairman, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, new construction worksheet, streetscape renderings, site plan, floor plans, elevation drawings, and perspective renderings, 18 pages. Exhibit B, window specifications, 5 pages, received May 12, 2021. Exhibit C, revised drawings and plans, 8 pages, received May 26, 2021. Exhibit D, revised new construction worksheet and specifications, 22 pages, received May 26, 2021. Exhibit E, context images, received June 8, 2021. Exhibit F, architect's photographs of nearby houses. Do we have an Exhibit G? Okay, and the commission's actual inspection and review of subject property by all members except. I move that this commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. 1, that the application is to construct a 2-story, 3,268 square foot primary structure with superior wall foundation finished with stucco, smooth fiber cement lap siding with 6-inch reveal, smooth fiber cement shake siding and IKO asphalt shingle roof, and weathered wood color. Front porch will have 8x8 wood support posts, wood tongue and groove flooring and ceiling, wood steps and painted square wood lattice between piers. Windows will be Black Sierra Pacific SDL 2/1 double hung aluminum clad and SDL 2 light aluminum clad casement. Doors will be Rogue Valley wood panel with single light. A 17.5 foot times 14.6 foot screened porch and 19.5 times 5 foot 9.5 inch deck with wood railing with 2-inch by 2-inch pickets, spaced 4 inches on center, will extend from rear elevation. Area below porch and deck will be paved with concrete. Construct a 12-foot wide dark gravel driveway with 12-foot wide concrete apron and rear yard connecting with Cobble Street to a 19-foot wide dark gravel parking area adjacent to rear elevation. Driveway will be edged with metal. Construct a 61-foot long stucco retaining wall with stone cap adjacent to south end of driveway. Construct a 4-foot wide concrete walkway from Cumberland Circle to front entry porch. Remove 8 mature trees to accommodate construction. 1 mechanical unit will be installed adjacent to south elevation. Foundation plantings and maturing trees from the Montford recommended species list will be planted. Ground cover must be established within 15 days of completion of construction, and the remainder of the landscaping must be installed within 3 years of approval. If archaeological resources are discovered during site work, work will cease until city staff have been notified and have inspected the site. All work will be in accordance with attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals as required by law must be obtained before work may commence. 2, that the standards for new construction, primary structures found on pages 92 to 93, walkways, driveways, and off-street parking on pages 50 to 51, landscaping and trees on pages 40 to 41, fences and walls on pages 36 to 37, decks on pages 38 to 39, utilities and mechanical systems on pages 82 to 83, lighting on pages 42 to 43, and archaeology on pages 32 to 33 in the Montford Historic District Design Review Standards adopted on April 14, 2010, and amended December 9, 2019, were used to evaluate this request. 3, this application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. A, new primary structure is cited so that it is similar to the historic pattern in terms of orientation, setback, retention of green space, and spacing between structures. B, new primary structure is designed so that the overall character of the adjacent streetscape and building site is maintained. C, new primary structure is compatible in height, roof form, scale, massing, footprint, material, detail, fenestration, and proportion with surrounding historic buildings and other historic buildings in the district. D, location and size of window and door openings are compatible in placement, orientation, spacing, proportion, size, and scale with surrounding historic buildings. E, materials and finishes are typical of those found in the district. F, deck will be located on the rear elevation and inset from the rear building corners. G, new walkways and retaining walls will be compatible with the site and district in terms of dimension, configuration, materials, color, and texture. H, new driveway parking area will be dark colored gravel and located in the rear yard. I, mechanical unit will be located on the side elevation and screened with plantings. 4, that the action and improvements proposed in the application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montford Historic District.
Second.
Second.
Saris.
Okay, we'll vote by roll call. Vice Chair Eakins.
Aye.
Commissioner Brusades.
Aye.
Commissioner Gardner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hornaday.
Aye.
Commissioner Lazarus.
Aye.
Commissioner Oliva.
Aye.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Aye, just in time.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Myself, aye as well. That motion carries.
Based upon the foregoing findings and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued with the following conditions. 1, that the applicant submit shingle samples subject to the approval of staff. 2, that the applicant submit a stone sample for the retaining wall cap for the approval of staff. 3, that the applicant submit lighting specifications for the approval of staff. And 4, that the applicant submit mechanical unit specifications for the approval of staff. Anything else?
We might, just to clarify, that I think it's really shingle and siding samples. They're both the same product.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Manufactured.
shake and lap siding.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good.
Is there a second?
I second.
We'll vote by roll call. Vice Chair Eakins.
Aye.
Commissioner Brusades.
Aye.
Commissioner Gardner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hornaday.
Aye.
Commissioner Lazarus.
Aye.
Commissioner Oliva.
Aye.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Myself, aye. That motion also carries. Okay. We've got,
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. I'll talk to you in a few days or so.
Okay, great. Thanks.
We've got one item of new business also in the Montford Historic District at 119 Cumberland Avenue.
Thank you, Chair Kite. So just for context, this is the GIS map showing where the subject property is located. It's at the corner of Cumberland and West Chestnut Street. Hopefully you all had an opportunity to visit the site. I did go by and take some additional photos of the building today that I added to the folder in case anybody needs those, and I'm happy to pull up. There are obviously a lot of documents in this application, so I made my slide presentation really brief. So if there's anything that I can pull up during our discussion, please let me know. Let's see. Now, I'm getting some feedback from somewhere. All right, so this is the existing building that's on the site. It's a mid-century building. It was built in the 1950s. The site is about, let's see, let's go back to the first slide. You can see the building on the right. So it takes up about a third of this lot. It's pretty big. The lot itself is pretty big. This building has traditionally been used as a church. Historically, it was a church. I believe it was a Baptist church when it was first constructed. So the plan is to convert it to a new residential use. I believe there would be 12 new units. 12 new units. And so they're proposing some modifications to accommodate the new use. And what you're seeing on the screen, I'll just go through kind of what I've listed out as my concerns. So the first one I've noted are the proposed balconies. So if you're looking at this, the rendering on the bottom right is looking at the building from Chestnut Street, that you would typically think of as the front. It's got the front entrance on it. So the changes to this elevation are really minimal. They're proposing to change to replace this little roof overhang over the front entry and replace the doors. That the doors aren't original anyway. So this would be a new aluminum storefront door with side lights. And then the windows are predominantly vinyl and we don't know what the original window material was. So they're proposing to replace all the windows in the building with aluminum clad. As you can see on the other renderings, that there are balconies proposed. The top left, that is the east elevation, and that's facing this little unnamed alley that's runs behind the building. And then this is the elevation, the top right is the elevation that is facing Cumberland Avenue. So, this is one of those funky situations where a building that's on a corner, we consider it to have two fronts because it's visible from the right of way on that side. So when I first met with the architects to talk up through the project, they had an iteration that was the balconies were designed a little bit differently, and I can't recall exactly how they were, but they did. And at my suggestion, they changed it to have the support posts and be kind of more like a traditional looking balcony. In this, since it's been rendered, I have kind of developed some concerns about the balconies. I think that the material is not necessarily of issue to me. They're proposing I believe for the materials are metal. Railings and posts, and then there's a shed. The shed roofs are also metal. I think perhaps I could get behind supporting balconies on the east elevation since it's not a primary right of way. And I understand that when this building is habitated by people living there in the building, that they would want to have some type of outdoor space to enjoy So I understand, you know, the need there, but I do think maybe some design tweaks could help. I think that at the very least, the top story, the roof should be eliminated and it should just be an open balcony. I have a little bit of heartburn about the balconies as shown on the west elevation that faces Cumberland Avenue because it will be visible from a primary right of way. I think it looks a little bit funky with the first floor where the support post is intersecting the window below. And you know, there, as I talked with one of the architects today, that you know there are historic examples of multifamily buildings that have balconies, but they are kind of more incorporated into the architectural style, whereas these feel more applied in some ways. So I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on that. So that's the first piece. The second piece that is definitely giving me some pause is proposing to paint the masonry. I don't think so. If you're looking at the building from Cumberland, the section that looks a little bit lighter in the bottom left rendering, that is actually concrete block and it's painted and it's not beautiful. It is. So the portion to the left and to the right where you can see the kind of like brick motif, that's one of the, you know, most interesting qualities about the building. That's kind of like I would say medium red. It's kind of an orangey red brick. And so the area between where it's the concrete block has been painted to be a similar color, if you will. It is definitely not very attractive. And so the proposal involves painting the entire building. I did some homework on mid-century architecture, and you know, brick has obviously been a material that we've utilized on architecture for many years. But just in thinking through the kind of intentionality around using specific materials, there's definitely some information floating around out there about mid-century buildings and how brick was kind of one of those choices that was made because it does kind of have this industrial minimal feel and was used intentionally. And I think that too, that painting the brick, generally we discourage painting of any masonry surface on a historic building that's previously unpainted, regardless of what era the building is, in part because it's not great for the building envelope, the brick, it's not great for the brick itself. But also to think that then you start to lose the little brick motif a little bit, and the building feels really heavy for the site and kind of the surrounding, you know, more, you know, single family or residential style buildings. So I am not supportive of painting the building. I asked for they are also proposing a roof deck. Let me pull up the, sorry, I was putting together my presentation pretty last minute today. Let me just pull up the rest of the document so we can look at the roof deck that's proposed. Okay, so this gives you a better idea. This is looking at the front of the building. So they need to add a stair tower here to access the roof. And then what you're seeing is a metal railing and some planters that go around a seating area, and then this shade sail above. I think that if you're going to see this from anywhere, it would be probably from the intersection. If you're, you know, standing far back from the building, if you're standing right here or possibly even on the other side of the street, I don't think this will be highly visible. I'm going to leave it to the applicant though to make their case as to this fitting in with the district. This is not, we don't review buildings like this very often where we have, a non-contributing structure, where we're looking at these kind of more contemporary elements. So part of what I was after is trying to figure out how big the shade sail is, what color it will be. This is looking at the building from the Cumberland Avenue side. One of the other things I noted was you can see in front of that seating area, it's probably hard for you to see, but there are three mechanical units. Typically, we require mechanical units to be screened. So I asked if those could be moved or how they would be screened from view. This is kind of looking at the stair tower from that side. I also noted in my concerns that going back to this elevation, the siding material is fiber cement panel. I suggested that perhaps stucco would be a better siding material for that feature, since the rest of the building is masonry. And I also suggested, as far as the concrete block goes that's on that sidewall, that they could potentially stucco that. If that would be, I'm not sure that would make it look better, except for from a surface treatment, but from a color issue, that still may not solve what they're after. And just going around the building, this is looking at the seating area and the tower from the alley behind. And this is from the back, where you really won't see it. I think I noted to go back to my slide presentation, they've got to modify this side of the street right here where the sidewalk is, to accommodate this new driveway entrance for the updated parking area. That is one thing that I think is great about this project, is it has this huge gravel lot here that then becomes this gravel lot that's smaller, and because they have open space requirements, this will all be reverted back to landscaping, and so we'll definitely soften it from the street on that side. So I've asked them there is granite curbing along here, and there's already a drive entrance right here, and there's kind of like an informal one right here. But I've asked them to clarify where the granite will be taken out, and if it can, where it will be reused. And if it's not reused, I think there should be a condition on the CA that they deliver it to the city, or make it, let the city come and get it if we need to, or whatever, if it can't be reused, so that it can be reused somewhere else. And then just to note, there's a new retaining wall that will need to go here. There's an existing section of brick retaining wall here. And initially, when I went to the site today, I had a question about whether or not it mattered if this was a different material. But I think if it were brick, it would be more noticeable, and they're planning to plant a bunch of landscaping in front of it. So it's like varies in height, but I think its tallest will be about 9 feet. But because of that, we're back to the issue we were at with the previous application, where there will need to be a fence above the wall. And so we don't have a rendering of what that will look like yet. So that has been requested. And this project will require level 1 review by our development services department. So I have made a note on my staff report that if that should also be a condition that that if changes are required during that level 1 review, that HRC staff is made aware, so that we can give feedback to the applicant on whether or not the commission or staff needs to review the changes. And then below that, I've listed out all the little nitty gritty details of things that are outstanding that we'll need for review. And I think that covers everything that I wanted to cover, but if I need to go back to anything, or if you have questions, happy to answer.
Commissioners, are there any questions for Alex? I see some head nodding. Does the applicant, I guess we've got Suzanne, Dawn, and Cam here. Has Robin and Jeff joined us? Are they planning to join us?
It looks like they're here.
Okay. I think maybe we'll take a quick pause to swear them in, Robin and Jeff, and then we can let y'all speak to any kind of additional information you'd like the commission to consider. Robin and Jeff, I'll read the oath and then I'll ask you each individually by name to affirm when I'm done reading. Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing for a certificate of appropriateness before the Historic Resources Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Robin?
I do.
And Jeff?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I think that's got everybody, and I'll open the floor to the five of you to provide any additional information you'd like us to consider.
Okay. Thank you, Alex, for running through the project. We were going to start with the site design. So Suzanne, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Suzanne Godsey with Sitework Studios. I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about this project. I don't know who is driving the presentation. Alex, is that you? Do you have our site existing conditions and demolition plan that you could pull up?
Sure. Yeah, just like I said, I didn't include all the documents in my presentation since there were so many. So you guys just direct me and I'll pull up as needed.
Okay. So I just wanted to point out a couple of existing features that we are removing on site. I know that Alex had made a comment in regards to the size of the trees that we're taking out and give you a little explanation as to why we're proposing to remove those. The first street tree that we're proposing to remove is obviously where we're going to be putting our new compliant driveway apron. So that is an existing red bud. The next tree is in front of the existing church, and it is a large Norway spruce, and it's growing right up against the building. To give you an idea of Norway spruce at maturity, they're about 60 feet tall and 30 feet wide. So this would never have been an appropriate place to plant this tree. They were just very popular at one point in time, and people put them in, and they were small little Christmas trees, and they never really considered how large they'd get. So we're proposing to remove that one. And then to the north, as you're heading to the unnamed alley, that last tree that we're proposing to remove is a dogwood, which I would normally want to keep. However, this one for some reason has been horribly pruned, and it just doesn't have a good look to it. So we have to replace a lot of plant material for our zoning compliance, and so we'll be replacing that with another dogwood. So those are the trees that we're removing. We are keeping the other two street trees that exist on the site. One, another red bud, and the other is a maple. So those trees are staying. The other features that we're removing on the site, obviously the existing sign and some sidewalk, some of the existing brick wall that Alex mentioned is failing. So we're going to be removing that as well. It is starting to have some failures, and associated with that is some of the ramping and the wood decking that gives you access to the varying levels in the building. So that's the existing conditions plan. If you want to go to the site plan, Alex, please. So on our site plan, like Alex was mentioning, we do have to have a considerable amount of open space. And so we strategically put that at the intersection that really preserves that park-like feel, which is what you kind of get when you go out to the site, which I really like that we're able to keep that. We're also being able to provide some, on-site parking and not trying to balance our parking, on street, which is, I know, an issue in Montford. So we've got this nice gravel parking lot that will be identified with handicap parking space will be concrete. We're just proposing just regular colored gravel, and those are concrete wheel stops, which Alex had mentioned that we clarify the material for those. So those would just be just your standard concrete wheel stops. So we've got ADA compliance issues that we're addressing, and we are creating that handicap space in the front. Some new sidewalk to get you to the side door that is facing onto Cumberland. We've got some stairs and some grade change that we need to work with. As this parking lot is pushing into the site, we are going to have to build a retaining wall, like Alex was mentioning. It's a maximum height of 9 feet, but that's only for a small portion. We're proposing for that to be concrete, and we are proposing to place the railing inside of that wall, so it will be mounted on top of the wall. And the thought with that is that we are getting close to that property line, and because this is considered by code a pedestrian guardrail, providing any space for people to walk between the wall and the railing is a safety issue. So that is why we have it proposed where it is. Let's see, we've got a maintenance enclosure area, which is going to hold our rollouts for trash and recycling. And we've got some materials that we can flip to in a minute with a gate that is running along the sidewalk by the parking lot. Trying to think, that's pretty much all of the site features to mention. If you want to scroll to landscape plan, bringing the site into compliance requires quite a bit of landscape. This is what it requires. So we have met or exceeded the ordinance and what they require. We've got our appropriate street trees and building impact landscaping and parking lot landscaping. We're landscaping the base of that retaining wall with winter jasmine, and then we're proposing to plant Boston ivy to grow up it, so it will look pretty good within 2 years' time with that ivy growing on it, and it'll give 3 seasons of really great interest along that wall. Let's see, that's pretty much it. Oh, I wanted to mention we do. So for our level 1 review and for the zoning compliance for landscaping, we are going to be required to go for alternative compliance because the existing building is inside of the required buffer. And so what we have here is our equal to or better than landscape plan in order to meet alternative compliance, which we'll have to go to the Urban Forestry Commission for that. And so that'll be a part of our level 1 review process. Alex, if you want to scroll down to the images. So these are a couple of the hardscape materials. This is a parking lot light that Duke has. I suspect we'll have 2. We haven't had them run the photometrics on that, but they're 12 feet tall. We've used these on other projects in Montford before. This is a city standard, very simple bike rack. We painted black. It's shown on the site plan. This is an example of a concrete retaining wall with the Boston ivy growing on it, which I think looks really nice. And then our trash enclosure is going to be a wood screened enclosure, and it'll be 4 feet tall. Those bins are not super tall, and so it's not going to be as tall as this image, but that gives you an idea of the materials and the detailing on that. And then the next sheet is just highlighting some of our plant palette to give you an idea of the plant materials that we'll be using on the site. So we've got sugar maples, dogwoods, small deciduous trees, large deciduous trees, some pyramidal hollies that get big, and then some flowering shrubs and some ground covers. So that wraps up my part of the presentation. I'll pass it over to Robin, and then if you guys have any questions for me, just let me know.
Thanks, Suzanne. Alex, is it easier if I share my screen, or what do you?
It's probably easier if I do it unless you're going to show exactly things that you've submitted. That way I can keep track of, like, if there's anything new, I just have to keep track of it because it would become an exhibit. So you tell me if you're going to just present from what the plans you submitted, that's fine. But I'm happy to also do it for you if you.
We have one new thing, but other than that,
okay.
So we can
that's
start
fine.
I wanted to show the renderings. They start on A01 or 2, A02.
Sorry if I get lost. I split all of the documents apart
That's okay.
so that they would be easier for the commissioners to scroll through. So you said A what? Sorry.
A02. If you scroll down one more, right there. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm stuck. Stop.
Okay. This is a view from Chestnut, and on it you can see the view of the balconies and the painted brick, and you can also see that the rooftop structure wouldn't be visible in this rendering. Can you go to the next page? And then in this rendering, you can see this is from Cumberland. And although this is a street view, the building is actually 144 feet away from Cumberland. So we feel that the balconies can be appropriate because they're so far from the street that I don't consider this building fronting Cumberland at this point. I consider the open space fronting Cumberland. And then in the right side of this image, you can also see the fence and the retaining wall that Suzanne had been talking about, and the landscape. And then if you go to the next rendering, you can see that even better. You can see the ivy going up the concrete wall in the back of this image. And you can also see our elevator tower coming up in the rear.
It's not a tower, it's a roof.
Right. The roof of the elevator, as Jeff said.
It's far from a tower. It's a 4-foot tower, so it doesn't exactly tower over.
And then if you could go to, let's see, A52.
What is A52 so that I know where to find it?
It's a section showing the. I said A52.
No, but 22.
Oh, well, she's separated it out. There it is. Okay. So from Chestnut Street, we did the maximum eye rotation vision. So if you're walking down Chestnut Street, you're not going to see any of the items on the roof. So you won't see the planters or the rail or the mechanical units or even the elevator tower. And then by the time you get to Cumberland, I feel like you're going to be so far away from the building that it's not an issue either. Do you have any input on that?
You will not see anything on the roof from Chestnut Street in front of the building.
Okay. What else do you want to talk about? My mouse has stopped working. Do you want me to share the brick thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, well, let's talk about the balconies a little bit. The balconies
Sorry.
are there. As Alex said, right next door to the Colonial is a brick apartment building. And it has balconies in the front, and we feel these balconies are appropriate. They're of the era, simple steel structure, and they're the one on the Cumberland side is about 65 feet from the street right away.
Oh, it's farther than that.
Is it farther than
Yeah,
that?
if it's 143, it's like 135.
From Chestnut to
Chestnut to what?
to the edge of the balcony.
Oh, Chestnut, you said coming in. That is 40 feet.
Excuse me, it's 40 feet. It's 40 feet from the property line. So it's not on the front of the building. It's also 140 feet away from Cumberland. And this building needs some, the units need balconies. The building will be, the units will not be very livable without some outdoor space attached to them. We feel this is an appropriate use of balconies. We feel like they're placed correctly, and we do not think it in any way degrades this building, or it's not in keeping with the architecture of the 1950 brick boxes.
Right, they're industrial
They are
in nature,
in,
so.
it's a fairly simple building. This is a very simple balcony. Douglas Ellington's hospital building in Biltmore Village has a similar balcony on it in the back, and we feel that these are appropriate. The items on the roof, there was a concern about the shade structure. It is not permanent. It's just a different form of an umbrella. It would be considered a piece of furniture. It is not something that will be seen from the majority of the vantage points on the property. The mechanical units are on the parking lot side because we felt like they were better placed there than on the alley side to keep them farther from the neighbors on the other side of the alley. There are 3 houses that access their property from that alley, so we put them away from those neighbors, and we can easily put a metal screen or a stucco screen or a planter in front of it if that is more palatable on that. There are only 3 mechanical units on the roof. The rest are in the very back along that little back walkway on the south side of the building.
Anything else?
Let's just talk about painted brick.
Okay. So as far as painting the brick goes, we have a few images of painted brick in Montford. If we can share that, figure out how to do that. Do that. Where is that?
It's on the bottom, Robin, in the new format.
Okay, first of all, we do understand the guidelines, and we also understand that brick has been painted for centuries. All right. There are buildings on Pack Square that are painted brick. We've worked on a number of historic tax credit projects that have painted brick. And this building is rather plain. It is not the best looking building, and we feel like painting the brick is appropriate. There is, as Alex mentioned, painted masonry on the building. Currently, the CMU and small portions of the brick are painted. At the time of the nomination, this building was considered intrusive. Now that's sort of archaic language. Now they're called non-contributing, but in 1978, I think it was, or 82, the building was considered intrusive. It is a very humble building, and it needs a little help. And we feel like painting it is appropriate, and we think the guidelines need some flexibility in it. This is not a Richard Sharp Smith masterpiece on Cumberland, on Montford Avenue. There's painted brick throughout Montford. The Hunter and Banks building at the head of Montford's painted. There are painted brick porches. There's a painted brick chimney just down the street and a foundation wall. And here's a close-up of the painted brick and block. And this building needs help, okay? And we feel like painting the brick is appropriate. And Now that's it in its current state, and this is an image of it painted. Keep going. Existing, proposed, existing. That's a good view of the tree that is, that's okay. Existing and proposed. And we would seriously like your consideration to allow us to paint the brick. It is a non-contributing structure. It will help it, the building. It will help the property overall. It will improve the look. It will make the units more valuable. And we think it will be a nice addition to Montford. And the guidelines requiring unpainted brick seems extreme in this situation that we're in with a non-contributing structure. And that's about all I have to say about brick. And the balconies, we've talked about that. And I think we hit the high points.
Okay. So I guess, are there any questions for the design team?
Commissioners?
Yeah, I mean, if I've missed this in the submission, excuse me, but the church has a sign. Is there any plan to have a sign for the building applicants?
I think we're going to have Suzanne, are we having a low sight sign? We're not planning anything on the building, I don't.
I have not proposed anything, so if it's not going to be on the building face, then we'll need to put some type of signage in the landscape.
Currently, we do not have plans for signage on the building.
We most often review signage via minor work as long as it meets the standards. If it exceeds like the size requirement or something like that, we would have to bring it back to the commission. But if you guys want to apply for that down the road, that's totally fine.
Okay.
I think we need some time to develop that further.
Are the window, I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, no, as to the Norway Spruce, since I walk or run on that part of West Chestnut almost every day, I can attest to its impinging on the sidewalk. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
The material
and just-
of the windows, is that the glass itself, is that tinted or reflective, or is it just clear glass?
It would just be clear glass.
And the trash cans, you're having individual recycling and trash cans for each unit?
No.
So, no, it will be a bank of them, but they will not be for each individual unit.
Alex, when it says that wall material should be finished, this is the first concrete wall I've seen. What does that mean, finished?
It just means that you can't do block or something like that. So
Okay.
the commission's allowed concrete walls before. Obviously, they're found historically in the district.
Okay, that's it.
I just want to clarify on the trees really quickly. I didn't have a concern about any of the trees. I just needed to list out the species and diameter. And I was sad to see that dogwood today. It was, as you said, mistreated, or I'm not sure how you worded it. It was unfortunate.
It's been abused.
Alex, did any of those other painted masonry come in front of the HRC?
I do not know. I could check the file for Hunter Banks and see if we have anything for that. If I think that building was painted some time ago, well before my time with the city. So I'd have to check our file to verify that. And obviously there are plenty of examples in Montford of painted brick. but they may have either just not gotten a CA, or it could have predated the standards. You know, that's obviously, those two scenarios are very typical of Montford. So, but I'm happy to see if I can dig through the file for Hunter Banks and see if there's anything in there that might help us.
There's also a painted mural on, I think it's Cullowhee Street on the side of 9 Mile that's painted brick.
They did not get a CA for that, so not a good example.
There are precedents for painting brick in Montford. You just have to get away with it.
Commissioners, are there other questions for the applicant? Okay, then we'll pause for just a minute and open the floor for public comment.
Give me 1 second. It looks like there are a number of people listening. Yes, we have one person in the queue. I'm bringing them in now.
Okay.
Hello, can you?
Yes, hi.
Hi there.
My name is Jamie. Hi. My name is Jamie Ashburn. I live on the alleyway side of the building.
Jamie.
On the east facing side.
Jamie, we'll need to swear you in before you make your comments.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to read the oath and then I'll ask you to affirm, okay?
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing for a certificate of appropriateness before the Historic Resources Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Do you?
I do, yes.
You can proceed.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I'm excited about the idea of the project in general, the building, and I think it's a great idea and look overall. I don't like the balconies though. I live on that alleyway side there, and because of the height of the building, I know it's not really of consideration, personal stuff like that. The balconies will be pretty high and looking down on the houses behind it, and I guess the balconies, you know, in terms of the architectural integrity and preserving the character of the neighborhood, I don't really see a building in Montford that has metal balconies like this, so it doesn't really seem like it goes with the character of the rest of the neighborhood. And then on top of that, the eastern side balconies, which is where the primary place of all the balconies are, that actually is pretty darn close to Chestnut. You know, they talked about being 140 feet and 60 feet or whatever away in the front side there, the Cumberland facing side. But on the east facing side, that's, you know, the building itself is 10 or 15 feet away from the sidewalk. And then the balconies are, you know, they start another 10 feet or so away from there. So it's within, you know, probably, I don't know, 25 feet of the actual sidewalk passing by, and there's not really anything to kind of act as a screen or anything like that. So all those balconies would be in full view of the entirety of Chestnut as you walk or drive by, and it just doesn't seem like it's really in keeping with the changing of the facade. I think that eastern side of the building should fully be considered as, you know, a front facing or at least a widely appearing side of the building to Chestnut, because there's not really anything that prohibits that view right there. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Shannon, are there other callers?
No, that was our only caller.
Okay, we will close the floor to public comment. Commissioners, discussion?
I mean, I am concerned about the metal balconies and where they are visible from as well. I'm concerned about them as to their congruity with the historic district and how well they actually fit with the existing building. As to the 140 feet from Cumberland, it seems to me on a few applications we have had some pretty distant visibility situations where, you know, if the feature was visible from a street, it was visible from a street, period, whether it was 140 feet or 25 feet. You know, those are the things I'd like to explore a little more, and I'd like to hear other people's thoughts.
Is there a material change in the balconies that would help you, Commissioner Eakin, to allow for the balcony?
Yeah, I think the metallic balcony is a real problem. I also think that, as noted by staff, that the existing apartment houses, like the neighboring Colonial, for example, you know, do incorporate the balcony into the architecture. And I heard the applicant talk about the livability of the apartments really requiring some kind of outdoor space. You know, I don't know what design changes might be possible and what material changes might be possible to alleviate those concerns as to congruity.
Bill, I tend to agree, and I get a little bit. I think we have to be very careful in an application like this to make sure we're clear and reference the applicable standards. I think for a couple of reasons. One, it is a non-contributing structure, and so the rules are different, and we have to, I think, be careful to understand what those standards are, and that the assumption isn't that because it's non-contributing, there's the freedom to do anything, or to make concessions that really aren't a pathway through the standards. I think that's one important thing to note. I do think that the standards are somewhat unclear. They don't answer things directly like, can you paint the brick? When you sort of scroll through the two places in the standards that it tells you to go, certainly for non-contributing structures, there's certainly not a lot of language in and of itself that references to the neighborhood settings section, which also isn't particularly clear. It does talk about sort of integrity of materials and maintaining the sort of character and quality of the building. In both of those kind of sections. But the other thing, I think that it's, you know, there's some, what's the right way to say it? You know, certainly the existing building, which has been there for a long time, is not particularly fabulous to look at. I think that certainly the applicant is trying to make improvements to make it look nice, and it's certainly been sitting that way for a long time in its current condition. But I think there still has to be, for us, a pathway through the standards to arrive at that place where the building does look nice and does enhance the neighborhood in ways. I certainly think the landscaping is tremendous. I think it's certainly a significant improvement in the quality of that corner of Montford. That's a pretty strong corner in that neighborhood, and for it to revert back with some open green space and beautiful landscaping, I think is certainly of extreme value in the project. And so I think I have to been sort of scrolling through the standards a little bit to try to find those answers about the balconies and about the painting. Really are the two big things for me.
So, Chair Kite, or My thoughts, scrolling through the standards, as you were saying, is on page 69 with the guidelines for non-contributing structures. I mean, it is fairly clear that it says every effort should be made to maintain the architectural integrity of non-contributing structures. So I feel like we've kind of got maintaining that integrity as a baseline. And then number 3 about keeping them compatible with the neighborhood, the building, its environment. And specifically just going to the painting first, I also feel like the guidelines are very, very clear with saying it's not appropriate to paint unpainted masonry. And taking a leap from the 2 of those, one thing about that particular building that has always kind of appealed to me is because it's unpainted brick, and I realize that it's an intrusion, a non-contributing structure, but it has always echoed the other unpainted brick apartment type buildings that are scattered throughout the neighborhood that I appreciate. And I know that it's a different era, different style, but to me it echoes that. And if it were painted, it would really change the look and the feel and the link. And so I'm linking through the standards with the non-contributing buildings, with our guidelines on masonry, and then my observation about how this fits in for me with the larger brick buildings in the guidelines. So in the district. My feelings in the interpretation here is that unless there was a very clear reason for painting this, such as preservation of the brick, which I haven't heard and I have never heard of, that if it's just purely for aesthetics, that I'm not seeing it as a meaningful reason. So
Alex,
throwing that out there.
Do you mind to pull the renderings up, the sort of street view renderings that are in our packet? Yeah, I think one thing to note in the renderings, which I think is maybe not quite what it will look like in real life, when you paint brick, that distinction of the joints between brick units goes away because it reads really monochromatic in a way that is not the case, unless of course you paint the mortar a different color, which feels like not really what happens when people paint brick, and also really tedious and labor intensive. But I think the rendering, you still pick up a lot of that joint detail in the mortar joints between the brick that I think in real life is going to read a lot more sort of monochromatic across those facades in a way that that I think when you certainly the photographs of Hunter Banks in the front certainly just reads as a blank sort of gray kind of a wall, and you lose a lot of the brick, the joint detailing. I certainly one of the more interesting things about the building to start with is the sort of brick detailing in those spaces where the brick sort of pops out, and I would I'd hate to lose some of that because we have this sort of monochromatic kind of thing that's happening, and certainly there's still shadow and there's still textural difference there, but it seems to me if we're maintaining anything, would be the integrity of that kind of a detail, which is unique to that building. And certainly if there were anything character defining, that would be one of those things to speak about, is that the care that was taken to do something interesting with the brick when it was first constructed. So I'm struggling a little bit with the painting. I am interested to hear other people's thoughts on that, and also the balconies. Those still obviously seem to be the two big things. I don't know, Gail, if you have a place where you've landed in this standards regarding those balconies and which facades they sort of end up on.
Well, this may be irrelevant, but when it was mentioned that the back of the hospital building in Biltmore, the hospital building in Biltmore had those metal balconies, I went and looked, and they're on the back part, like the true back part of the building, and they're much lighter feeling than the way the renderings are showing the ones here. But as far as like poking through the standards, I have not made quite a nice chain. And to me that there's a real functional component to that. It's not just purely aesthetic. It's removable, whereas painting is not. I don't know. I'm not feeling it's quite as discongruous with connection to the neighborhood, but that's just, I'm not backing that up right now with Stan. I will look.
This is just kind of an aside and may not change anything, but I did sit down with Stacy, who for some of our new commissioners, Stacy Merton, she was my predecessor and worked with the commission for many years. And sometimes I pick her brain on design stuff, and we looked at this together today. And one of the thoughts that we had was potentially, if you all are okay with the balconies, that the railings be changed to match the railings on the roof. Railings it's a horizontal railing, and there's more space between, or this could be like cable railing where it lightens it and it's not, such a barrier against the building. I do think that metal I feel like it's the most appropriate material for this building since it is a mid-century building versus wood, but I understand there may be differing thoughts on that. I do think that at least eliminating the roof coverings would probably help a good deal also.
Yeah.
Claire?
Go ahead.
Sorry. Quick clarifying question on the painting. Alex, didn't you note that some of the brick has already been painted? First question.
There's a section of, sorry, I keep trying to scroll. Now that I can see my presentation, I keep trying to scroll on the meeting screen and it's not helpful.
Yeah.
Let me get to that space. Let's see.
So while you're getting to that, if it has been, how would we treat that? If we said you needed to be unpainted, do you say it goes, you strip the paint off so it's back to that? Or would you say, since that's already been painted, that could be painted, but unpainted brick could not be painted? And again, newbie question, so bear with me. No,
that's a great question. I would say that yes, if it's a previously painted masonry surface, that it can be repainted. The existing section that's painted is
sorry.
That's okay. Let me pull up the photos. Hang on just a sec.
And Alex, while we're looking at that, it looked to me like maybe that section wasn't brick underneath. It looked like maybe it was masonry block.
It is. I think for the most of it, it is.
It is which?
It's CMU block and not brick.
Right. That's what it looked like. So somebody went to some effort to try to match the color as best as they could with the existing brick.
Right. So Commissioner Vaughn, so if you're looking at the left where my cursor is, where the little pointer is, and then going all the way to here, that is all.
I'm not seeing your cursor.
Oh, you can't see my cursor. Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Technology.
So it's basically, if you're looking at the west side of the building, which is on the bottom left.
Bottom left.
In this 3D view, so you're looking at where the balcony starts on the left, and then you can kind of see. I don't know if you can tell on your screen that it's a little bit lighter. It looks a little bit lighter from there over.
I'm actually looking at the photo of it online. So
okay.
If I'm looking at this, the lower left, the part that has the cross on it in the original photo, which would be to the left of what I perceive are the balconies, because that's where they're showing windows in this, and then this chimney. So I think I'm where you are. In the photo, yeah, that's clearly a darker orangey color compared to the lighter color that takes you then all the way over to the far right under the not an elevator tower, also being that darker orangier color compared to what's in the middle. So are you suggesting those two parts are the painted parts?
No, the part in the middle is
Oh, the part in the middle is the painted part.
Correct.
Thank you.
The other sections are unpainted brick.
Got it. So the darker stuff is unpainted and the middle part is painted.
Right.
Right. So back to the original question. So they could paint the middle of that theoretically, but if they didn't touch the end pieces of that.
Correct.
Okay. And that's just data, applicants, not analysis. I'm just collecting info.
Sure. I think Dawn raised her hand.
Yes, Robin entered an exhibit for the original Cumberland side of the building, the west side. Could we bring that up so we can all take a look at that CMU brick connection? How the masonry joins with the CMU?
Robin, I'm going to jump off so you can share your screen again.
It's the building that shows the entire west side, or the photo exhibit that shows the entire, yeah, and then zoom in on that. So there is no easy way to join that CMU and the brick and have that look. The brick is orange, the CMU is pink. That's the closest they could come. And stucco is not an option.
I mean, for conversation purposes, it feels like there's a color of paint that's closer to the brick than what's there that exists in the world. For conversation purposes, if that is the route the commission thinks the project should go, I think there's a color that exists that would be closer to the brick than that one.
I think Sue has tried to get in.
You're on mute.
I too really like the brick. I actually kind of like this building, its own little self. It's not a beautiful building, but it kind of has its own little thing going on. And I'm also struggling with the balconies. I totally understand and would want a balcony if I was living there, but the way that they're appearing to me right now, it's very heavy on this building. I mean, I honestly don't know how to fix it. The cable situation, would that just be the normal kind of the more modern looking cable with metal? Was that an option, or is that way too modern?
I mean, that's something that we haven't seen. Like, some people have come to us and asked for that, but on, a contributing structure like the back of the house that was a historic house where it was easier to say, no, that won't fly. But we don't talk about non-contributing buildings, especially that are institutional or commercial use, very frequently. So this is definitely kind of like one of those, one of those rare items where it's kind of new and different. I think that, because you could kind of look at if you're from a philosophical standpoint, if you're considering, mid-century architecture, certainly a lot of it was approached from the aspect of utilizing new and contemporary materials and kind of like what's the most efficient thing and those types of things. So I think an argument could be made for a railing like that on this building. And I also think it would help visually, just make it not quite so, you don't have that boundary of a picket railing, vertical picket railing. But I don't, without seeing it or knowing kind of more what the commission thinks about that idea, a little bit treading lightly here in terms of ideas. It was just something that Stacy and I talked about today, especially because the railing on the roof has the horizontal elements, and that kind of carrying that, if they're, going to be multiple railings, it's best that they all match or, have a similar orientation so that there's not competing elements, if that makes sense.
I think a horizontal lightness on this would just be more appealing on this kind of industrial little guy, more than the balconies just feel heavy, and they're not as part of the architecture in a way that I think respects the building.
And I'm agreeing, Alex, with what you and Stacey talked about and what Sue was saying, that little, like some minor modifications on that to lighten it up would just wrap it up in there. I also wanted to.
May I say something? Originally, we had suspended balconies from the side of the buildings. The building, there were no columns. It was
Hanging.
yeah, they attached at the base, and then there was a steel rod that connected back to the building, and we changed that, and unfortunately deleted that from the model that we were using. But it is, from what I think I heard Alex say with her conversation with Stacy, that would be preferable to what we're showing now, and we are more than happy to go back to a balcony without columns that would be suspended. And the reason we did it the way we did was there weren't, that we know of, I'm sure there were, but suspended metal balconies weren't really a thing in the 1950s. At least that's my perception or observation. It's a more, but we went with a pretty standard columns and roof cap. But we'll change it to a suspended balcony that's attached only at the base and with a rail.
Well, I would say, Jeff, I would like to hear, and the commission may not be able to give their thoughts on it until they see it, but I would like to hear their thoughts on it, because I think, what Stacy and I were saying is that not sure that it would be preferable necessary, but it would be helpful to compare to see if one or the other was more compatible with the building. That was what our suggestion was, is to relook at that, even though, this was, I pointed you down this path of kind of doing something that was a little more in line with, traditional balcony type, because I too am not sure that there were any suspended balconies. And to me, it looked very like, wow, this is definitely like a very current modern day, apartment looking building. So it made me a little bit like, not sure that's the right thing, but I think it might be helpful to look at it again and kind of compare and see,
Well, even though it looks heavy, the steel columns are 6 or 8 inches, and it's not. I think I understand it feels heavy, but it's as light as the one in Biltmore Village, because it's the same detail as the one in Biltmore Village. So we can make the columns even smaller. We could, the railings can be horizontal metal, or but there are things we can do to make it lighter. But I think
the rendering also is a little deceptive in the heaviness from the angle. Mm-hmm. Just, and we agree that the brick, Ms. Kite's comment on the brick being painted, you still read the texture, but you don't so much see the grout. And that was really a function of the rendering program we had. But you will read the texture, but the grout is not going to be a different color. But I think in the same way, the renderings are deceptive in that the balconies are not as heavy as they look.
Right.
And That's my take on it.
I think for me, the balconies, it feels like a step too far to suspend the balconies. I think, Jeff, as you were talking, that felt my instinct on the subject of whether there were those sort of detailing on balconies in this era of construction is probably felt like that they probably weren't a thing. It feels like maybe a step too far. I do think it would be helpful to explore some options. I think there's a balance with the columns of being too skinny, right? Then you have an opposite problem where it feels really out of proportion, even though it's probably structurally fine. It feels like it's not. And certainly there's a proportion there that's important. I think, studying the railing detail, I think is valuable. I think studying it with and without the shed roof on there, I think would be interesting. It's certainly appealing for tenants to have the roof on there, but I think it's worth looking at visually in a couple of different ways to compare. I think the commission is struggling a little bit with how to visualize those things, those options that might start to feel better. I think that I'm of the opinion that the street frontage is the street frontage. I think that that we need to be mindful of that with regards to the placement of balconies, and if there's ways to minimize the balconies on those street frontage sides. I think that feels like a right thing to do. I don't have really any concerns about what's happening on the roof. I think it's so visually limited from where you're going to really see anything that that feels like not really we've not talked really a lot about that, I don't think, in this meeting, but that doesn't feel super critical for me. Other thoughts, commissioners?
I just wanted to offer, if it's helpful, that I have the I'm sorry, Vice Chair Eakins. I just wanted to say that I have the hospital building in Biltmore Village. I have that pulled up in my pictometry software if you want me to present that so you can see what the back of that building looks like.
It's been helpful for me, Alex. I would recommend sharing if it's appropriate.
Can everyone see this okay?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Looks like one has a sort of a shed roof over it and one doesn't.
So you're on mute.
Sorry, I can't move over. I can't move sideways. I might be able to look at it from a different angle. Let's see what we can see from this direction. Yeah, it looks like one does have a shed roof.
It's also visible off Lula Street on Google Map, Google Street View.
I will add, and not that this is, I mean, well, it is Jermaine, that this is on the edge of the historic district. It's facing away from the historic district, so.
Also that those balconies are very much on the back of that building.
Mm-hmm.
Like clear 100%.
Yeah, that's something to me that we would probably review at staff level as a deck.
I wanted to add my 2 cents in that I've worked on a lot of these sort of mid-century big brick industrial type buildings. And a lot of the conversation was around the balconies sort of mimicking the kind of old fire escapes, which generally had the same theme, which was, thinner sort of overall visual, just thinner railings, not as heavy visually. And then I guess in essence, they were sort of suspended, minus that, the ladder that connected them. But that generally was kind of the theme in those conversations. And I, obviously sometimes plans don't always maybe showcase. It might appear heavier on the plans than they will be in real life. So I certainly appreciate that as well. But if you guys do present a different, maybe lighter style deck, maybe that's just something to consider.
I really like that, Stephanie. That I hadn't considered the fire escapes, but you're right. A lot of those buildings had sort of fire escapes on the sides of them. And yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and they're usually kind of, I guess, attached by a ledger or something like that. But they probably not a safe balcony, right? Because they are a little bit thin and just meant for egress. But I think if there's something that isn't quite as heavy but is also safe as a balcony, I think I would be on board with all of that.
And Commissioner West, that wouldn't be covered in your experience?
No, well, I think my opinion on the roof covering on the top is that I think if you don't have something, you're going to have patio umbrellas out there anyway. Because whoever lives in those condos is probably going to put some kind of shade up there on that. And maybe that's in their HOA docs or something that they're not allowed to put patio umbrellas. I don't know. But so I would much rather see just some type of covering that is intentional versus, a lime green patio umbrella up there. But personal preference.
And am I seeing that these basically look like individual as opposed to what you see in a lot? I was trying to do some Google image searches myself where they seem to span across a whole section of the building rather. And I know then you end up with you have to put up dividing rails, but would that make it more acceptable, for lack of a better term, to people as if they were longer balconies like the fire escape concept as opposed to these individual ones? And maybe if you could show the face on to, because I was looking at the side, but do you have the? Right, yeah, so you can see they're all individual. Now I realize you've got the chimney, it looks like, in the way there. But I'm just trying to see if there are ways that we can meet the guidelines and satisfy what, the applicants are very willingly, gladly trying to do and working with us on this.
I almost think continuous balconies make it even heavier on that side, especially when there's sort of on the top left where there's sort of 3 bays. It feels like having space between them makes them, I think, achieving a sort of a lightness and a transparency there will be easier if
Possibly.
they're all continuous.
Possibly, but the continuous does, again, from my Google image searches, when you say 1950s apartment buildings with, balconies, they all tend to be that long, and they are thinner materials. As it's been pointed out, they look more like fire escapes. In fact, I had to look closer to see if they were actually fire escapes and not balconies. So,
I kind of think that eliminating the roof coverings makes them lighter, and I don't to me at least like an umbrella or something like that is a feature that can go away, that just is looks like a patio feature versus a part of the building itself. Just my 2 cents on that.
Other comments?
How does what about, where does, excuse me, what guidelines for non-contributing structure do the balconies violate? Specifically, not they look heavy, what specific guidelines do we specifically don't meet?
Jeff, I think we're looking at page 69 of the Montford Design Standards that speak to non-contributing structures. And as Commissioner Lazares pointed out, we're mostly utilizing 1 and 3, which say every effort should be made to maintain the architectural integrity of non-contributing structures. And then 3 says alterations and additions to non-contributing buildings shall be compatible with the size, scale, color, material, and character of the neighborhood, the building, and its environment.
Okay, so I say, as a licensed architect of 30 years, that this is in keeping with the architectural integrity of a building built in 1950. If these balconies were built in 1950, that's what they would look like. And we can change the railing direction. But I've worked on several buildings from the 50s, and this is what would be there. And I'm also not certain why things have to be invisible. You know, and what is the harm of someone in Montford seeing a balcony in 140 feet away or 40 feet away or 10 feet away? I don't see where anyone is being harmed. I don't understand that. We have a black and white view of the balconies that might be a little. Can you get that same angle? Just do a straight. That might take away some of the heaviness of it, but I really I'm having a hard time understanding what. And in terms of neighborhood character, there are balconies on apartment buildings. Would you be more comfortable if this was built out of wood? You know, the ones next door are wood. We can make them out of wood. We can get it a little bit more straight. Yeah, and
Jeff, I think what I'm hearing the commission saying is it's not that they have to be invisible. I think it's just limiting the visual impact on the building. Because as a couple of them have pointed out, this building does have its own style. And I don't think I've heard anyone say no balconies at all. I think we're just trying to kind of get to a place where the balconies they're tied to the building and look appropriate to the building.
Yeah, I also don't think that the standard says that any design that comes from the same era as the existing building is acceptable. I think it's a matter of the building as it is and the compatibility with the historic district. So I don't think it answers anything to say, oh, this particular thing was built by various structures in the 1950s. It's a matter of this structure and this district.
And I don't know that I hear a ton of consensus. I think there's been a lot of feedback around seeing parts of this project conceived of in a different way, as at least as comparison, if not as a change in direction that is in better alignment with the guidelines. I think the two big issues remain the balconies and how they're detailed and their proportion and their massing and their scale, and the paint on the brick, I think, is the other big question. And I don't know that we're in a place where I've heard consensus from the commission in any particular direction around those two issues, that there would be a successful outcome of a motion. Is there anybody that disagrees with me?
No, I agree. I'd like to hear from other people on some guidance we can give them, at least about what we would find acceptable on the painting of the brick. We've talked about the balconies, but we haven't talked about what could possibly be acceptable on the painting aspect.
I feel the guidelines are to follow the guidelines on keep the brick unpainted and paint that middle section of the CMU block something. That's up to y'all, whether that's red or whether that's black or whatever. But something that's where I am on that, and I'm so happy that this is being put back into use. When a lot of examples in town aren't, I think I'm not gonna soapbox, but there's a greatness here that if everybody gets to a point with your balconies, I think this is going to be a great project. But the balconies I see as, yeah, maybe this isn't doing you any favors. The illustration of it being a little beefy, or anyway, I'm with you on, or I am of the don't paint the brick team, as the guidelines say, and as far as balconies go, I think it's a separate era of addition on here, not trying to make a 50s building have a 50s solution, but to show it as a modern addition, as an adaptive reuse of the property. That's where I stand.
I definitely agree with Commissioner Hornaday. I think that the brick should remain unpainted. I think that the standards are very clear in that, except for that one section that already does have paint on it. So I'm okay with that as well. And I think it's kind of difficult to compare these kinds of balconies with other balconies when there's nothing that's really similar to this. But I'm excited to see other versions of the balcony, because I agree that, I mean, I think a balcony would be good here. I just don't think that this one is the right one.
I think the path forward, it feels like there's really two ways for the application to move forward. One is to request a continuance and to give yourselves time to evaluate the feedback that you've gotten from the commission today. And the other would be to make amendments to your application that you think better align with that feedback, and then ask for a vote on those. But I don't know that we've, as a commission, without seeing more information, have been able to offer some kind of consensus on the direction that things should go at this point.
Seems like a continuance would be the best option. I mean, if you all are going to consider the balconies at all, I think that, you know, that obviously needs to come back to you.
Does anybody, is anyone on the commission okay with painting the brick? No, correct? Nobody?
No.
So no buildings in Montford can ever, that are not painted brick now, can ever be painted. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we have to go to that extreme, but that's how I interpret the standard that applies.
Okay. The balconies. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to just say, when the building gets those new windows in and the beautiful landscaping and other ideas that you have, I think that brick is going to pop, and I think that building is just going to look great.
Okay. We are more than happy to look at different balconies, and we can go back to what we started with, which was a suspended balcony, and bring that back. Let you look at it and change the guardrail to a horizontal. We can make it a cable rail if guys like that. How would you feel about a glass rail? I mean, are there other options that you would like us to look at when we're looking at rails? Just same as what we're showing on the roof as option one, another option being a cable. Do you want us to look at a wood structure? I don't really think wood makes sense, but we'll look at anything you'd like us to. We can, do you want us to look at a glass rail?
It seems to me that the heaviness is something we've kept coming back to. And, you know, I, not being an architect of 30 years, being a mere lawyer of several decades, you know, I really humbly have to say that I don't have the visual imagination to think of all the permutations and combinations of wood and glass and metal that you might be able to come up with. So, you know, it really wouldn't help to have my thoughts on it. I'd rather see you take the general thoughts that we've given you and whatever others might be able to articulate better than I, and you know, come back to us after a continuance with revised plans.
I'll put my neck on the block and say I like the idea of the glass because it allows the architecture and the brick and those details to show through myself. But I am more than willing to have people who've been doing this a lot longer than I have come back and say, "Yo, James, here's why you're wrong." So, but in the meantime, I like that idea, and to me, that the idea of being able to see through it seems to me that would make it lighter. But again, I have to defer to my colleagues who may be more expert at this.
To me, the heaviness isn't so much from those railings, it's more from the thicker posts as they appear on the plans. I'm more partial to the vertical railings or maybe even glass. I just would have to see it. But I guess the horizontal cable railings, I'm usually a little reluctant on those on higher floors. I just think they're sort of pose a safety issue with little people that like to use them as gymnasiums and crawl up. So, so I'd be more inclined to have a vertical, I think. But.
I think the other part of that has been talked about in a couple of different directions is the roof. And that's certainly one of the elements in looking at it with and without, or other roof solutions that are different than that, I think is part of the study from my perspective. I think it's an interesting idea to look at glass railings. I can't think of a time where that's been in our conversation in Montford to have glass railings in any location. I think that we've applied a similar strategy to a project that the one, it's not similar in that the glass was an opportunity to enclose a building's patio and still be able to see the building behind it, right? The Todd's Tasties building that's not Todd's Tasties anymore, and I forget what the name of that building is. But in that case, it wasn't a railing issue, but they did really enclose that building with glass in a really clean, sort of unintrusive way that let the building kind of read beyond it. You know, it's not the same as this railing. I still go back to where has there been a glass railing in Montford? I don't think I've seen one in the 4 or so years I've been on the commission, but I think it's certainly an interesting thing, James, that you bring up in terms of letting the building kind of read beyond it.
Anything we do is going to be new, from what I understand. It's a commercial building that is being changed over. So the question is, what are we going to do that could be used as a model? Maybe there are no other buildings that are ever going to come before us that are like this. If there are, as I'm always, president. If not, then let's look at what's going to, for this one unique situation that will meet our guidelines of trying to preserve architecturally as much of the building as we can.
Well, we always seem to have this, similar conversation, these larger scale multi-tenant residential that's sort of sprinkled really throughout Montford, and they're all kind of different. They don't come in front of the commission very often. It's difficult to compare them to adjacent, the scale of things that are right adjacent to them. We've had those conversations in the past, and can you look at them in the context of each other? And the era certainly in which they're built. And so there's a uniqueness to these buildings in the Montford district as part of the overall fabric that we don't really find in some of the other districts. We certainly don't see them in Albemarle Park and other places. And so I think that's one of the unique things about Montford that we really should be celebrating in a lot of ways is that sort of the sprinkling of these kind of bigger buildings inside the context of the residential fabric.
I encourage my colleagues to weigh in on this glass concept, because if we find that there's enough, people think they could get behind this or don't. I'd rather hear that as well, rather than have these people waste their time and money developing one or the other. So the more we can give them some more guidance on what we would be happy with, I think it's fairer to them, just in my opinion.
I think glass might draw more attention to the newness. This is kind of an ugly building that's looks really nice now. It's moving to another life, and I don't think anything you do is going to be detrimental to the building. But I don't want to see just a glass solution. I'd like to see another metal solution as well.
Jeff and Robin, have you all done glass railings on any other buildings that we could look at as examples? Like how are they fixed within the support system?
They have a clip. They're pretty common. We used them in Atlanta. I haven't used them here, but there's a number of systems out there that you can use. They're aluminum ones, and there's some really slick ones out there, and there's some that are a little bit more mundane, I guess. I don't really know the more simple. There's glass rail at the Montford rooftop bar and the Hyatt place right there. They're really tall but they can be really expensive. So we need to find one that's not crazy expensive, but also looks good. I mean, and we can get them on the Endurable Products makes them. And I think I'm sure they're made of some sort of safety glass, if not a clear plexiglass of some sort. The balcony manufacturer has some examples that aren't very good looking that we're looking at now. So we gotta find a good one.
I just really wanted to get a better idea. I was trying to remember if I'd ever even been in a building. I'm sure that I have. I just maybe wasn't paying, too much attention to what the structural elements look like. So I was just kind of seeing what's out there.
Yeah, there's some that are very, can we get a screen?
Yeah.
Pull that last one. That one up that had, yeah, you can even see it.
So this is the system we're looking at anyway.
I don't have the tie back.
Yeah. It's kind of magically floating, but we wouldn't do that. But that's the glass railing.
And then there are also some that, you can barely see. There's a a vertical piece holding it all together. But there's some that, you know, you've got a vertical piece at the corner and then space through there, and some of them have top rails.
That's a mesh. I
There's
don't know
a
if that would
mesh.
be acceptable.
Stained glass. So we can keep looking, and the reason I don't want to come back and somebody and not have thought of something. If anybody thinks of something they would like for us to look at, please let us know,
Yeah.
and we'll look at it. We'll round up the usual railing suspects and we'll put them on the building and do our best to present them in a way and in an honest way that they read the way that they're probably going to look in real life. And we'll try different things, and we can give it another stab next month or whenever is the we can fit in the agenda. So we are asking for a continuation.
Alex, do you have some dates for those for the next meeting?
Yep, it's pretty tight. Well, I say that the 23rd, and I will be out. I will be out from the 18th through the 22nd, Jeff and Robin. So, so if you send me something like, you know, at the end of next week, I may not see it until I'm back on Wednesday, but that's okay. It's not, we don't have to re-advertise for this either. So if you like need an extra week, like if you need until the 28th, that would be fine.
So you mean that the next HRC meeting is the 23rd of June?
No, sorry. That's just the resubmittal deadline. I'm sorry. The meeting date is July 14th.
Okay.
So,
All right.
we're in one of those wonderful months that I love where we have an extra week in between. So it gives a little bit more time. So so if you all want to if we can communicate offline about what your timeline is and how much time you think you'll need, and then we can just make a game plan if that works for you.
Okay. Cam and Dawn, did I convey your wishes correctly?
Yes. Yeah, Jeff. Yeah, and Robin. Thank you, guys. I guess this is Cam here. I'm just a little confused. You know, we're sitting here, we're talking about, you know, the potential for really ultra modern contemporary balconies on this building that we're interested in preserving some degree of historical integrity, and yet we can't paint it. It doesn't seem consistent to me, and maybe I'm missing something here.
I'll speak for myself. The glass would allow you to see through to see the original unpainted brick.
Okay. But to me, that seems to be just a very contemporary approach. I mean, you're putting something that doesn't fit with the time period on the building.
So are your balconies.
Well, the discussion that I think that we just had was that's not necessarily the case, was what I gathered. But maybe I'm not following.
I think, Cam, for me, the brick question speaks to really the first of the standards for non-contributing structures that talks about maintaining the architectural integrity of these structures, and that I think that's a substantial change to the architectural integrity of the existing brick that's on the building to paint it. And I think that the balconies talk about, you know, there's a guideline in there. Number 3 is the thing that addresses alterations and additions. And it certainly doesn't have a specific list of things to choose from, but it does talk about compatibility with size, scale, color, material, and character of the neighborhood and the building and what's around it. And so I think that is, you know, certainly your architect has an instinct about that. I think the members of this commission have an instinct about that. That is why this sort of collection of folks and conversation will help us all get to a place where the commission of 12 people or so feels confident that we've made a decision that's in alignment with those things. And because it doesn't have a list of things that says, yes, you can use a glass railing, we have to talk about it, and we have to let your architect explore the options and make their recommendations and think through the requirements as they interpret them, and then let us do the same. And some of us are architects and some of us are something else, and it gives us an opportunity to collectively feel like that the conversation is productive and that we've come to some sort of a consensus that feels like it meets the intent of those standards.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I also just want to clarify that although the architect brought up the idea of the glass balcony, I mean, that's just thrown out there as an option among others. And it wasn't the commission saying you need to do this. So it is an option. We'll look at it if it comes up. I hear about it being clear, but it might also be very distracting. And I mean, honestly, what has been presented with the metal balcony is compatible with the other building that's somewhat similar across town. It's just that they look a little different in the renderings than I think we were comfortable with. So, I mean, we're not proscribing. We're just trying to weigh in on potentials, if I capture that correctly.
Yeah. Okay. One other question. So am I getting the impression that potentially having balconies on both the east and west side of the building is still an option?
I think there's been a little bit of discussion about the facades of the building that face streets, but I haven't heard a lot of comment from commissioners regarding whether there's specific elevations that the balconies should go away. I don't think I've heard anyone say that at this particular point. I think that's been maybe a secondary concern for some, but no one has said if only they weren't on this elevation.
Okay. I think that's an important point for us to consider as we move forward with this project, because I think each unit does need to have access to outdoor space, and if that's not the case, then we may need to reconsider. So that is a big deal to us.
And when the elevation issue was articulated by a person in the public comment, and none of the commissioners has picked up on it.
Okay. Thank you.
If we're ready, I'd like to make a motion to continue this application to the July 14th meeting.
Okay.
Second, Lazarus.
Okay, we'll vote by roll call. Vice Chair Eakins.
Aye.
Commissioner Mercedes.
Aye.
Commissioner Gardner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hornaday.
Aye.
Commissioner Lazarus.
Aye.
Commissioner Oliva.
Aye.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Myself, aye. That motion carries, and we will continue this application to our next meeting.
Robin and Jeff, I'll email you guys tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Alrighty. So I don't want to keep y'all very late since we were here so late last week. I feel like I'm still recovering from that. There is just a couple of things on the other business section that I wanted to go over. One is thanks for those who responded to me about resuming in-person meetings. We don't know yet if we're going to do that in July. The space where we normally meet has been undergoing some updates, and we're hoping that it will be ready by the time we meet, but we have to know by the time we notice. Well, that's not true. We don't have to know by the time we notice the meeting, but it's better if we do, and then there's not a lot of confusion. So I will keep you all posted on that. I noted subcommittees versus working groups in our other business section because we have not been able to convene our subcommittee that we newly formed right before the pandemic started, which was very unfortunate because we were, getting some ground underneath us and trying to plan an event with the Preservation Society. So it was a bummer that got put on hold. But since then, there's been a little bit of clarification from our clerk's office about a subcommittee, which is something that we have to follow open meetings law for, and we have to advertise for like we would for a normal meeting, versus if we call it a working group or a task force, it is a less formal body that the commission is forming of itself to just look at certain things. So be on the lookout for some correspondence from me in the near future about kind of regrouping with the folks that were on that subcommittee before. We've lost, I think, probably more than half the members that were on it since then. But so I'll just reach out to everyone to see who wants to be on the new task group, which for those who don't know, the task group was working on doing some education and outreach events, kind of focusing on that part of the duties of the commission, as well as our landmark kind of task group, and looking at our list for potential landmark designation and updating that, and talking about other things we might want to talk about related to landmark designation. So the other idea I had was, and I want to say a big huge thank you to James and to Will. James was one of the people that organized the cemetery event, which was really, really special, I think, for all that were involved and present. And it felt like even to be the little tiny speck part of that was just really, really meaningful. And it was a really wonderful experience. So thank you for that. And I do, in thinking on that, and before I forget, I want to say thank you to Will for all the work he did on creating the video for the awardees last year and this year. That was much appreciated. And the Preservation Society for providing the PA system and helping blast out the video for us. I was thinking that, number one, it would be great to have maybe next year we have like a task group or a task force that helps figure out how we want to celebrate the award next year. So maybe that's something that we can look at instead of just kind of reverting back to our old way. If things are, back online, then of where we go to you guys may want to still do it with PSABC and do it at the Griffin Awards, but maybe not. So I think it would be great for a group, or even just the one task force or whatever it ends up being, to kind of look at that annually to be the leaders for that. And then I did want to figure out a way to say thank you to James and the South Asheville Cemetery Association and PSABC, because they really did all the heavy lifting for the event. They did, set up. I got there early, but everything had already been set up. There was a lunch provided, and it was really, really nice. And so I just, if any of you have any thoughts on that, I'd be happy to hear. It's not like the city can't just like write them a donation, so what's meaningful and, and would make the commissioners feel proud and happy to honor their efforts. And so maybe we can talk about that next time, or if you guys want to freestyle it now and talk through ideas, that's fine too. I also wanted to note that this is sadly Bill's last meeting with us, which it was like we got to the second motion and I was like, this is the last one. I'm so sad. So I'm also going to try to brainstorm on getting together with everyone in the next month or two to celebrate Bill's service, as well as Brian Moffitt, who was our past chair, but his term expired in the middle of the pandemic and we weren't able to celebrate his service either. And so it would be great to do them together if we can. So I'll try to work on that also.
I'll just throw in very quickly one thought, and it's sort of a bigger one than I think you intended, but it sort of fits with what's been happening lately. I would love to see a small working group that's not official, looking at the idea of how we could pitch the city about reparations funds for preservation type of things like the South Asheville Cemetery, but there are other landmark type buildings that didn't get the type of support they should have because of how things went, that we should say, look, while you're considering where to send reparation money, this would be a great way of, making amends, as it were, by helping to preserve and update or maintain, some of these types of things that are within our bailiwick. Just one thought.
No, I think that's
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I keep interrupting you today, Bill. I just want to say I think that's a great idea. And I think that's something that really dovetails in with the education and outreach piece, because it's a great way for us to educate ourselves as well as tell stories through those efforts, as we learn about what properties that we might look at for those efforts or places, within the community for those efforts. And it will help, I think, us maybe do some education and outreach within the community too.
Thank you.
Yeah, great minds think alike. I just wanted to say that I thought that was a brilliant thought by Commissioner Vaughn, and that although reparations certainly are often seen as relating to many of the horrible historical things that have gone on since slavery, that the foundation for reparations is definitely for slavery, and this particular cemetery goes back to them, so it's especially appropriate.
I didn't want to seem too self-serving all the time.
I think, James, it's interesting as you started talking, my mind went in a completely different direction in terms of thank you. And is there an HRC volunteer crew that could be doing work out at the cemetery for over a course of a weekend? Is that something? And I know we can't maybe all meet together. We've got to kind of do it in chunks. But is that an opportunity to say thank you to the Cemetery Association folks by donating some of our own time to whatever work efforts they have that are ongoing?
Yeah, we do have work days, and a number of you signed up, left us your email, and they wanted me to follow up with those especially. And I just wanted to do it in a broader sense of, I think that'd be a great idea. That's what we wanted to do, is use those emails to say, here's when the work day is, and I can find out when that one is, and if we can make it part of the commissioner's communications, I'd be happy to say work day coming up 1 month or whatever. So wonderful idea, Emily.
Yeah, and it's totally fine if everyone ends up wanting to go. We would just advertise for it. That's all. So obviously we'd be super excited if everyone wanted to go. Yeah. So.
Well, we haven't been able to be in person, so it's also another opportunity to all get together, and it's outside and it's summer and it's, it'd be fun. It was great to see you guys in person, those of you that came that Saturday. It was a beautiful afternoon. And
maybe we'll see some more bears.
And maybe there'll be some bears.
On June 19th, Juneteenth, Andrea Clark, is going to. This is. Am I muted? No. She's at the YMI and starting her James Vester Miller Trail. It's the launch of that, so that might be some. There it is. That's the printed piece. Daniel's Graphics donated that printing. But I think there's something like before our meeting, it'd be nice just to kind of recognize something that's happened in the community that is related to us. Like, there's such a good story, the Drummer Building redoing those windows into wood, and it ended up costing cheaper. And but just if maybe it's a way that for all the commissioners to, once a month, we rotate out the property of the hour. And for that hour, as Emily in charge of the city, I think she gets the keys for that. I'll check with Janice. And she's in charge of the city. She can declare the next hour and a half the HRC hour. And that there's an award, a mini award of just recognizing something in the community that is supported through HRC. Is a thought of a mini sort of recognition of something. And then I also wondered, and this is probably more for Alex, what with the non-binding resolution for the Charlotte Street thing, what is how is that sitting? Where is that?
So I'm glad you brought this up because Janice, we had planned to, I think Janice was going to maybe mention it last month, but it was just too much stuff. And so there was, for those who, I don't think, like, I know Sue wasn't here. I can't recall who else might not have been here, but the commission adopted a resolution opposing the substantial demolition of historic buildings associated with the new mixed-use development that's being proposed on the 100 block of Charlotte Street. So there was some what's the right word? There was a little bit of confusion maybe about the HRC's role in this process. So as far as the formal review process, the commission did not have a role in reviewing this as a zoning proposal. However, we were approached by PSABC to see if you all would consider the resolution based on the fact that you all are an advisory committee on National Register, either eligible properties to be listed in the National Register or properties already listed. And in hindsight, staff probably should have just done it ourselves versus having PSABC come, because then it ended up adding this kind of more political layer to things that inflamed an already kind of flammable situation or contentious situation. And so the attorney for that development took issue with the resolution that the HRC passed. And so naturally our city attorneys, including Janice, are involved in all of these communications. And what ended up happening was the Brad Branham, our city attorney, issued a memo clarifying that HRC's role as an advisory body and not that the commission is not part of the formal zoning review process. Janice, am I saying this right?
I can talk more about it. I think everyone should see the response. So what we did is I was at the meeting, so I was able to tell Brad that it was not inappropriate. I mean, the applicant for Charlotte Street, their attorney, and more so the applicant, the developer, said that that was improper. One, because they said that there were conflict of interest, that nobody should have been voting at the HRC. And we responded really immediately saying, no, this was not quasi-judicial. And the board was acting in its advisory capacity. And there were not conflict of interest and there are certain conflicts of interest, but associational relationship is not one when it comes to something that's just a pure advisory opinion. And so I was actually going to use this as a learning opportunity, because next month I'll talk to you about the update in your rules, just to update rules of procedure, because we have this new 160D statute that I think it's just an opportunity for the board to know what are the conflict of interest for rules of procedure or advisory. But be that as it may, what happened was we wanted to make clear we didn't want a situation where when it went to Planning and Zoning Commission that they were kind of blindsided by the applicant saying, oh, well, there was all this thing that HRC did that was not proper. So what we instead advised was that the chairs would submit the resolution, and that would be considered along with any other information that comes in on a conditional zoning. And again, wanted to also make clear for the record that the HRC acted properly, that all the members of the HRC acted properly in voting for that. And where it's at now, I think now that some members of the public who are familiar with the HRC or who are Preservation Society members they want to know why the HRC report is not part of the planning and zoning staff report. And we just simply said because it was not a part of the formal the formal zoning approval because it wasn't a local historic district. And so I think that the resolution as it was written should have helped to inform people and should have helped to inform the planning and zoning that that it's a national historic district and that as you stated in that resolution, it would have an impact or could have a impact on that designation and the integrity of the National Historic District. I advise planning and zoning too. So those meetings is come up. The demolitions have come up. And right now, well, at the meeting, there were people on both sides calling in. But the demolition of those buildings did not seem, from my perspective, did not seem to be a driving concern for the Planning and Zoning Commission, probably because they're in bad condition. And there were people on both sides, some people saying, well, they're in bad condition because they weren't kept up. There were people on other sides saying they're difficult to keep up. So where it's at now is that it passed narrowly at Planning and Zoning Commission last Wednesday. At first, there was a motion to deny the approval, but that was a 3-4 vote, and so it's a majority vote. So that failed, and then another commissioner brought a motion to pass it, and it passed 4-3. It will now move on to the city council. We were handling the virtual meetings and there were some technical difficulties. So a lot of people had issue with that, but luckily by the time it goes to city council, and I don't have that date yet, it will be a live meeting. And so there will be that, even more opportunity for live participation. So that might be more than what you wanted to know, but I do think that I would like the opportunity to make sure every commission member sees both the resolution and the memo that legal did for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then also that the chair, you would be, if you so choose, submitting that resolution once again as part of the city council materials.
I think Shannon was trying to chime in. And
I was just trying to say that the city council date has been scheduled for July 27th. So this will be an in-person meeting. So anybody, if a member of the HRC would like to come and speak and present the resolution, or it can be submitted through the city's public input site, just as you did for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Either option is available.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that the resolution's contents be considered by city council, and in a context where you've got a very fine attorney. I mean, that firm represents me for local purposes. They're great. Deliberately, minimizing the kinds of things we have in our resolution and trying to deflect from them. I think it is important that we, in our role as established by the city and county legislation that established the HRC, it is extremely important that the legitimacy of our role and the substance of our comments be considered. I mean, that historic district might well not survive very long as an historic district with 12 contributing structures disappearing.
I want to add to first, Gail, I love how where your cat shows up when it's time to go. I was hoping it would put its little head up and make that face like, enough talking already. Oh, that was so cute last time. I just wanted to say that first of all, I will send the memo to all of you in the resolution just to make sure everybody has that in front of them. The memo we did not send to you immediately because there was no opportunity to really give you all context around the memo and what was swirling around around all that stuff. So apologies that it's, a little bit of a lull between, but I'll make sure I made a note to send that to you, and I'll do that tomorrow. The other thing I want to note is, one of the things that was called into question, as Janice mentioned, was conflict of interest. And I want to make clear that we do not track your organizational affiliations. So there were questions directed at me, like what is the membership of the HRC? Who is a member of the Preservation Society? And I kindly replied that is information that we do not track. Well, I do know, that several of you are members of the Preservation Society. That isn't information that I shared. Sometimes there are things that are public records that I have to share, like the roster for the commission, but I didn't share any of the personal information that I might know, just kind of offhand. So just want to reassure you of that. And I'm sorry for any of you if that was a frustrating situation, because I understand, and I was upset myself that the integrity of the commission was called into question, and I understood that some of you might have felt pretty upset too by that if you heard about it in the community. So just know that I don't track that information, and I wouldn't share it without asking you or letting you know or something like that. So
I mean, the integrity of two commissioners was besmirched in some of the accusation that flew around. And I think for anybody who wasn't at the meeting, it's good to remember that Commissioner Mitchell, who was on the Preservation Society board, had left long before that resolution came up. He left at 6 o'clock. It was a 5.5-hour meeting, so he left long before the resolution. And, then Will Hornaday happens to be, as Janice was saying, his connection is associational, which has nothing to do with passing a resolution in some function other than our quasi-judicial one.
And either on this or going forward, I think Will had asked Alex, is there anything I should be concerned about? But just for, any time going forward, if you wonder, is this a conflict of interest? You check with Alex. If you want to call me directly, that's fine. I wasn't even thinking in terms of what this could turn in, what had turned into at the time, but sometimes it makes you feel better. Just say, well, I did check in because, but I also was upset that the questioning of the integrity of this body or your body, because it's a very difficult role you're in. You follow quasi-judicial procedures. This is not, we do have some rogue boards that go do different things, which may be why, why there could be questions sometimes, but you are not such a board, and I really appreciate your dedication and always wanted to do the right thing. And I told Mr. Mitchell the same thing. He's always procedurally. I can't think of any of commissioners on this commission that aren't careful about procedures, recusing themselves when necessary, at least asking, is this a conflict of interest? But I want you to know that as legal staff, I'm here to answer any questions about that. And sometimes it does come up in HRC because, well, sometimes it's uncomfortable. You might have a neighbor that you're, having to vote on their project across the street, but that's not a conflict of interest. So we'll have more conversations about this going forward, but I'm glad it came up. And I hope that answered your question, Will, and where we're at in the process on that.
I forgot what my
Time for a
question
motion
was.
to adjourn to take us out.
Second, Hornaday.
See you all next month.
Alrighty, thank you everyone. Have a great evening.
See ya.
Good night.